Well, good morning. Welcome to the Chasing Wisdom podcast. Today is an important day in history, as well as a big day for LSU fans and Georgia fans. The SEC championships today. LSU's having an amazing season, and I'm really pumped about this game today. Also, December 7th, 1947 is the day that Pearl Harbor was attacked, which I believe behind 9/11 was the second largest attack, or maybe the only other attack on U.S. citizens and soldiers. So just an important day to remember things that happened there. I think we'll start off this morning with the little masculinity quiz.
Let's do this.
Yeah, let's do it. So we got 10 questions here. Here we go. How masculine are you? Do you prefer football or yoga?
Football.
Yeah, football.
Football all the way, absolutely. Would you rather wear trainers or shoes?
What are trainers?
Like, shoes designed specifically for training, like working out. Not just any shoe, specifically
A training
workout
shoe?
training shoes. Yeah.
I'd rather wear boots.
Well, yeah, I prefer hiking shoes.
Well, we're going to go with trainers.
Okay, because they're specific.
This is specific, yeah. And that's the only two options. All right. There's more answers than there is to the question here. Burgers or burritos? Wait. There's different answers.
All right, I have my answer.
One answer is I'd rather have a salad. One is burritos for life, and the other is I love burgers.
I love burgers.
Burritos all day. You can switch those up. A burger's a burger. It's either going to be a patty, like a turkey patty, or a beef patty. With a burrito, it'd be steak, chicken, shrimp, fish.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with burritos.
Yeah.
I do love a burger, but for me, there's this one burger at this particular joint that no other burger compares to.
What is it?
It's at Brazen.
Brazen?
Yeah,
Oh,
me too.
I can't stand brazen.
Have you had the Delta Blues burger?
I've had a couple things from there. I didn't like
Have
it.
you had the Delta Blues burger?
Okay, I'll go try the Delta Blues burger.
Ah, dude, I'm telling you, money. Anyways, but we're gonna go with burritos. Do you have long hair or short hair?
I have
Short.
God, it's getting shorter every day.
We all have short hair in here. I'll have short hair. Keep it neat. Do you ever cry at sad movies?
Sad movies? No. Last night we were watching some dog movie where I can't remember. It's called like Enzo or something. It's about this racer that has a dog, a golden retriever.
Yeah.
Really wanted to
Yeah.
watch it.
I haven't seen it yet.
She literally cried within the first 10 seconds. She watched the trailer and started crying. And at the very end, she's just bawling out crying. I'm like, you want a hug? And she turns around and looks at me. She's like, yeah.
I'll tell you what got me. The last movie that got me. It's Avengers Endgame.
Oh,
Really?
that was tough.
The cheeseburger scene, man.
The cheeseburger scene?
Cheeseburger
Whenever
scene.
after Tony Stark dies, and they have his little memorial service.
Yeah.
And he what's his name, sitting there with his daughter.
Yeah.
Happy.
Sitting there with his daughter, and she says she likes cheeseburgers, and he says, "I'm gonna get you all the cheeseburgers you want." And it got me.
Oh, man.
I don't typically cry at anything, so that's the answer we're gonna go with.
Okay.
Do you prefer maths or art?
Oh, neither.
Oh, man. Okay.
I mean,
So
music.
there's an
musical
option.
arts.
There's an option here too that says I prefer music.
Music. I prefer
I mean-
music.
I like the science aspect of math, but also, I appreciate art. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I
Yeah.
like the history. I like the history of it. I like to know about the people that actually, and that comes from my mom. She was an art major, so it's kind of been
So
passed along.
let's set up a scenario here.
Yeah.
Because we got to find an answer.
Okay.
Oh, if I had to
some scenarios you have to choose between here, right?
Oh,
you
yeah,
can.
yeah.
You're going to go to an art gallery. You're going to go to a concert, or you're going to go do math.
Concert.
Oh, that's an easy one. But how about that
100%.
a science museum? Like a science and aeronautical space museum? Okay, when
Yeah,
we went
but
to
you're not
Okay,
actually
that-
doing math there.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, but it all revolves
can
around
appreciate
that. Okay,
that
when I
without
went to
doing
Washington, is it Washington D.C.? I think. Yeah, I went to Washington D.C. It's got all the big museums.
yeah,
like the-
Smithsonian and all that.
all the Smithsonian's.
Yeah.
The one that I remember that stuck out to me the most was the science and aerospace. I think is what
Mhm.
it was, and that all revolves around math. I mean, none of that would have worked without math.
Yeah, but that
True,
doesn't
but
mean you
that's-
like math.
No,
Yeah.
I like math.
Okay, fine.
Ask me a
Well,
math
we went
question.
with
Ask me a
music.
math
We went
question.
with
Go
with
for it.
music.
Give me a math.
What's 1,000 times 4?
4,000. Boom. Math.
You're a math genius.
Yeah.
Are you a meat eater or vegetarian?
Meat.
Dude, I'm
We're freaking meat eaters.
All
We're all
day.
freaking meat eaters in here.
carnivore all day.
Hugs or handshakes?
Handshakes, brother.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give certain people hugs, but other than that, I don't really care for hugs.
I don't even handshake my wife.
Do you prefer a beard or a clean shaven?
Beard.
Beard.
Even though mine's terrible.
Pretty obvious for me. Beard all the way. Yeah, but grow what you got, man. That's my mentality.
Yeah.
Unless
Grow
it's
what
patchy.
you got. Hey man,
Who
grow what
cares?
you got.
Yeah, I guess so.
Grow what you got.
Who am I to judge?
Titanic or Terminator?
Terminator.
Absolutely.
Even the new ones that are terrible, I would watch those over Titanic.
You are as masculine as you feel. We think you're perfect the way you are. Whether you like burgers or burritos has nothing to do with your gender. Enjoy life on your own terms, not according to falsely constructed gender stereotypes. Well,
Well, I was enjoying this.
I
until
was
then.
too until that little
tidbit.
yeah.
Wow.
Oh man. So what are we talking about today?
Today we're talking about whether or not men should take risk. And so here's what I thought we would do. I thought we would let's just offer. We're going to ask the question, and then I want you to give me your like knee-jerk short answer.
Okay.
And then we'll dig into it a little
Okay.
bit, right? So answer the question. Knee-jerk short answer. Should men take risk?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Right? I would imagine a man's life where he doesn't take risk. It just sounds boring and dull.
Yeah, it sounds like a safe mode where there's very little options. And you remember the Snowden podcast?
Mm-hmm.
What he says about risk is like the more risk mitigation you have in life, the more chains you put on yourself and the less how does he put it? The less options you have for anything great to come about.
Right. Absolutely. I agree. So whenever I was thinking about this the other day, I thought, and y'all can add to this, but I thought I was thinking like, what types of risk are there? And so I came up with like, there's physical risk, right? We'll get into that.
Mm-hmm.
There's financial / career risk, right? Usually those things are tied together. There's, and I kind of wanted to bring this up. I don't know if many people think about this or not, but like spiritual risk,
Absolutely.
kind of dig into that.
This should be the biggest one.
And then I also saw that I think this is one of the major dichotomies between the genders. So kind of maybe our little trivia thing did lead us somewhere
Ooh.
here.
Ooh, we didn't even know it.
Yeah. So it'll work out good. All right, so let's dig into physical risk here. And whenever I was thinking about physical risk, I kind of think that there's maybe two aspects here. And I was just kind of thinking about my life in the past and some physical risks. So one aspect is kind of shallow. It's not very deep. But things like bungee jumping, skydiving, racing motocross, like just whatever, you pick an activity, a physical activity.
Okay.
Right? Should men take those types of physical risks?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstance. I remember last time, so every year, Barbo and some of the guys and I, we all go out camping, usually to, where is it, Arkansas, Ponca? Is that it?
Yep.
And we kind of do a man check of some sort where we go and jump off a cliff. See who can jump off the highest. I remember when I was...
That was you,
man,
buddy.
We're going to have to insert that clip. I remember, how old was I? 21, maybe 22?
Something like that.
Jumped off a, 60, 65
65.
foot cliff into the water.
Mm-hmm.
I was fine. Went back a couple years later. Oh man, something changed my synapses, or maybe I just got smarter. I don't know. I jumped off that cliff. I've never been so scared climbing up a cliff, let alone jumping off it, and then jumping off of it, and then I busted open my mouth, bit into my tongue, ripped it open. Not doing that again. I'm gonna jump off a 30-foot cliff next time. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I want to push myself, but at the same time, I don't want to risk that anymore.
That's kind of my max at this point in my life is about 30 feet. So I kind of have a story to go along with this to kind of put it in perspective, I guess. So when I was in my early 20s, I started racing motocross on four-wheelers. I was in the military. I was in great shape. I needed something to do besides doing stupid things on the weekend. And so I went and bought a four-wheeler. And I started out like just racing cross-country type races. And that was a lot of fun. And so I stepped up to the next level and started racing motocross. But then I got married and then had a kid. And I went to a race, and I was still racing. I continued to race. But I went to a race, and I went for a jump that was longer than I should have attempted. I came up short. I pitched the nose down. So if you can kind of picture this in your mind, I pitched the nose of the four-wheeler down to land, but I didn't make it to the landing. And so I went over the handlebars, smashed my face into the ground. My boots came like behind me. It like folded me over
You
backwards.
did a scorpion.
Yeah, and my boots hit my helmet, jacked my four-wheeler all up. I don't know if it didn't knock me out, but I don't remember the rest of the race.
Yeah.
Like apparently I got up and bent my handlebars back into place and finished the race. But when I finished the race and I walked off the track, like I must have had like 10 people come up to me and say, "Dude, we didn't think you were going to get up. Like we thought you were going to ride out of here on an ambulance. Like that looked so bad." And I didn't get hurt. And the only injury I had was that I got a lot of dirt embedded in my gums inside my mouth, which I don't even know how that happens. But I raced one more time after that.
Yeah.
And the thing that got me was because I love racing. I like any type of racing, from the fastest machines on the planet, whatever, airplanes, to a good old fashioned foot race. I like racing. And I was having the time of my life, but the thing that got me was like I've got a kid now, and how stupid would it be for me? And I don't think many people get killed doing motocross, but how terrible would it be for me to get paralyzed racing motocross and not be able to like just enjoy life with my family?
That's what I always think is whenever I do something stupid, like, man, it would really suck to be paralyzed.
Yeah.
Like, I really wouldn't want to put that on my family.
Right. So that was why I quit racing. So I think that even with physical activity, and there's some things that I still want to do. I still want to skydive.
It's fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Me and Brennan actually bungee jumped, which I don't think there's a whole ton of risk there, really.
No.
So, as it pertains to that type of physical risk, what would you guys say? Like,
Where do you draw the line?
give some wisdom. Yeah, where do you draw the line?
I think it's a risk versus reward situation in that aspect. Do I get much out of jumping off a 65-foot cliff anymore? No, I've done it before.
Yeah.
You know, I can tell my kids I've done it. I know I've done it. I conquered that fear. But at the same time, I don't want to risk. I mean, I hurt myself last time doing it, and I got lucky. Like, I could have jumped off that cliff and had a second thought and fell on my back and then, you know, dislocated a vertebrae. And,
Yeah.
and that's an okay scenario, but now I have pain for the rest of my life. And I don't want to not be able to pick up my kids when I'm 65 years old, you know, pick up my grandkids or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's a risk versus reward in those type of scenarios. But I don't think that doesn't mean I'm gonna jump off another cliff. Maybe not that cliff, but I'll jump off another one. I'll
Yeah.
still go skydiving.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah. I think with skydiving, I'm going to wait until my kids are older, just in case, you know? Like, I'm going to wait for my youngest kid to be an adult.
why? Just in case something goes bad.
Just
you
in
won't.
case something goes
Okay.
wrong.
That's fair.
Maybe I'll wait until after my daughters get married. Because I think the thing that I wouldn't be able to deal with personally is if my daughters didn't get walked down the aisle.
Yeah.
But anyways. All right. The other aspect here of physical risk is, y'all know I'm a big proponent of, I believe every person has a responsibility to take care of their physical self,
Absolutely.
their own physical health, which is, by the way, a whole nother podcast I think I'd like to get into. But working out. A lot of people say, a lot of people think that you're going to get hurt, you're going to get injured, maybe especially doing the type of working out that I do, like CrossFit. But what's the risk versus the reward of the way you live life physically? So, and this is getting into like your health and your fitness, right? Like your diet and whether or not you exercise.
Yeah, I can guarantee, or I can't guarantee, but I would put money on that the people that have that argument are going to be in the hospital before you and I are ever in the hospital, or anyone that works out and has a healthy diet. They're going to last a whole lot longer. They're going to have a whole lot less risk when it comes to heart attacks, when it comes to diabetes, when it comes to any type mental health, when it comes to any of those variances. We're not taking the risk when it comes to working out, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's my tidbit about it. We can go into it deeper.
I agree 100%. And here's the thing, man. There's always a chance that you're gonna tear something,
Yeah.
But most of that stuff is fixable.
Yeah.
What I think is a lot harder to fix is heart disease,
Yeah.
lung disease.
What about the guy that the CrossFit guy that I can't remember what movement he was doing, but he got seriously injured.
Kevin Ogar.
Like he went to the hospital. Like, hey,
Yeah, I think he was doing a snatch or something and dropped the barbell behind him. The barbell bounced off. So a big part of that story was that the setup, he was in a competition, CrossFit competition, and the setup, they had the lifting platforms were not level. And
Okay.
when he dropped the bar backwards, it bounced off of the platform, hit a rig, bounced off the rig, came back and hit him in the back. And that's what broke his vertebrae and paralyzed him.
yeah,
And so, that was, man,
Freak
that's just one of
accident.
those freak accidents that could happen.
Yeah.
I mean,
or it's why
it's like a car wreck. I mean,
yeah. Or the first time I stopped doing CrossFit when we had an instructor that I don't even know how they got certified. We were doing 135. We had 130 or no 80. What's a 25 on each side? 95.
95.
Yeah, we were
Oh,
doing
yeah.
95 pound on our back, like in a squat position. We'd go down a squat, then we'd come up and do a box jump, or not a box jump, but just a jump.
jump
Just
with
a
the barbell
with
on
the
your back.
Barbell on my back.
that's a terrible idea.
Yeah. So when you come up, the bar kind of lifts up off your back.
Yeah.
And, then
And
we
you
come
got to
down,
receive it again
yeah, and then it slams down
on your vertebrae.
on your vertebrae. Yeah, my whole literally after that workout went to Best Buy. I don't remember. I thought I got bit by a spider or something because my whole right face went numb.
Yeah.
And I thought I was having a stroke.
You smash some nerves.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's definitely bad coaches out there
yeah.
that don't need to be coaching.
But that doesn't mean you should
Yeah, I think.
not take the risk
Right.
and not work out.
Well, yeah, like, I mean, there's always going to be bad. If you're talking like sports wise, there's always going to be bad coaches or people who think they know what they're doing, but they're just hurting you instead.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there's some coaches, they just want to push people too hard. And one of my mentalities as a trainer and a coach is if you're getting injured, you're not getting fit. So
What risk are people taking by not working out?
heart disease, lung disease, in my opinion, because this is personal for me, mental health issues.
What about how they're and a lot of people don't care about that. They're like, I don't care. That'll be when I'm 85, 90 years
Right.
old. Not necessarily.
Maybe. Probably.
Yeah.
I think statistics would say otherwise.
But what a lot of people think that way though,
Yeah.
even though they don't know better. But what about even smaller things like I'm 27 years old and I didn't take care of my stretching,
Hmm.
and it's hard for me to bend over and tie my shoes.
Right. And that's exactly where I was.
Yeah,
I was in that position at about 34 years of age. It was difficult for me to bend over and tie my shoe. And it wasn't because I was overweight. My mobility was just terrible. My flexibility was awful.
yeah.
Um,
But I think a lot of people, they don't understand that by being lazy or by not taking the risk of working out, and I think a lot of it too is the mental aspect. I hear a lot of people, I don't want to go to the gym because people will judge me. Trust me, no, we won't. Like,
yeah,
as being
no,
the fat guy
I'm
that
judging
used
you
to-
for not going to the gym.
Yeah, like, if anything, and anytime I see a fat person at the gym and they're doing like a terrible workout, just they don't know what they're doing. I'm
Yeah.
like, good for you.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Trying.
Like, yeah, like I've never looked at anyone in the gym like, oh, you look dumb.
Yeah.
Like, I have
Right.
the utmost respect for anyone that works out.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm on a lot of forums, and I'm sure you are too. And I feel like almost everyone that works out has that exact same mentality. Is that good for you?
Absolutely.
So I encourage anyone to go out there and work out, because later on in life, if you don't do this, by not taking this risk, you're giving up other things further down in life. Like, if you have grandkids, you won't be able to pick them up. You won't
Right.
be able to hold them. You won't
Yep.
be able to put them on your shoulders. You won't be able to go throw the ball with them. You won't be able to ride a roller coaster with them. You won't be able to go on a long distance hike with them because you
Right.
get out of breath. I remember one thing that Whitley and I were, when we were first trying to plan our wedding, we were going to maybe do a destination wedding to Colorado Bend. And when I went out there, it was about a mile and a half little walk out there. And I was like, there's no way any
Yeah.
of our family will be able to make that walk.
Right.
They're just out of shape,
Yep.
It's not going to happen.
Right.
So,
Yep, I agree completely. And we can have a whole podcast about that. if we want
absolutely.
to.
We can, yeah.
We'll shift from physical risk to, let's talk about financial / career risks? Should men take financial and career risks?
Yes, absolutely, with the caveat of as long as they can continue to provide before and after that risk.
Right.
You can kind of expound on that a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is something, 10 years ago, I probably would have been, I say 10 years ago, Brennan's 16. Probably more like 15 years ago, I probably would have been far more likely to take financial career risk. As a matter of fact, I mean, I would say, whenever I got out of the military, and for everybody that transitions out of the military, there's some risk there because maybe not everybody knows what they're going to do next. I certainly didn't know what I was going to do next. And by the grace of God, he called me into ministry, and I think God gave me a position here at the church, and provided for me. And I think that, and this is where, things are going to get biblical and spiritual for me. Once you are providing for your family, once you are, dependent to some extent on your current income, that's what makes it kind of difficult to take more risk.
Yeah.
At what point can you leave that? And I think this is where people get tied down, and unable to take risks. And so what's the answer to that? How do we avoid finding ourselves in a position where we can't take financial or career risk because we're so tied down?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with the way people handle their money. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit before is debt. You can't leave your job if you have debt because you got to pay that mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a terrible spending habit and you don't have savings, well, okay, let's say you're debt free, and you're the only one working in the family. Let's just use that scenario. You can't, and you have no savings. You can't transition to a different job or to go look for a different job or maybe pursue a business career or some other business avenue that you want to start because you don't have a savings to cover utilities, food, any of the expenses. So it's things like that if you just don't have a financial base that's biblical and that is a wise base, you're not going to be able to take these risks. It's
Right.
just, I mean, you can, but it's extremely risky. And I think that's the risk versus reward. I think you're taking too big a risk at that point.
Right. Yeah, and that's the same thing that I would say is that if you want to be able to take financial and career risk down the road, you absolutely have to avoid debt. Because debt is slavery.
I disagree a little bit. And
Okay, fill me in.
I want to hear what you have to say, and then because we're probably on the same page.
I thought it was what you just said. Basically, was
Yeah.
I mean, if you owe so much money on, and I'm not going to include a house necessarily because you can usually get out from underneath a mortgage with the house.
I think people
But cars.
on a little tidbit. I think people buy too big of a house. Spend
Oh
too
yeah, a
much
lot of
money on
people
a
do.
house.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
yeah,
anyway,
absolutely.
continue.
Buying too expensive cars, financing whatever 95% plus of it
Yeah, for way too long.
for way too long. Credit card.
Oof.
To me, credit card debt.
You should never have a credit card. Like, I don't care. And people are, you need to use it to build your credit. No, a bank will give you a loan. Banks, if you don't have a good credit, what they're going to look at is your debt to income ratio.
Right.
If you have a great debt to income ratio, they will give you a loan.
Right.
Like, they just will.
Yeah,
They know
'cause
you're
you're
a safe
making
bet.
money,
You're
right.
making money and you don't have any debt. Like,
Yeah. You have the money.
don't buy into the credit card. That is just purely marketing. If you can take anything away from this, don't get a credit card.
Don't get a credit card. No, so my point there was, I mean, man, if you have two, let's just say you have two big car notes.
Yeah.
Two big car notes, so $800+ a month. That's a paycheck a month for a lot of people.
Yeah. That's a mortgage on a house.
Yeah, that's a mortgage on a house.
A good family starter house. Good $120,000, $150,000 house.
Right, exactly. There's just no way you're going to be able to quit your job and step off into something else that you don't know how much you're going to be able to make if you have those kind of bills.
So you're saying debt in the aspect of personal debt. What about business debt?
I think it depends on your business plan, on how solid your business plan is.
Okay.
And you know, I'm not a. I have a business. I have a small business, but I'm not a big business guy. You're the business guy. You've got the business degree, so fill us in there.
Ooh. I don't think debt necessarily. It can be very dangerous, but it can also be a very helpful tool. Obviously, like Whitley and I, we took out a loan for our business, but the bank never would have given us that money if they didn't see the opportunity there. They do risk management,
Right.
basically. So they know that we have an opportunity to pay it off, and that they see that that's going to happen. And then Whitley and I prayed about it. God opened doors for us to do that, and I don't think we would have made that decision lightly. So I don't necessarily think that, and there isn't one specific line that I go off of to say, yeah, this is a good time to take out debt for a business. It's dependent on every situation. It depends on the market. It depends on, is it even a good loan?
Yeah.
Why do you need the money? Do you really need it just so you can be a little bit more fancy, or is it truly operational? Is it truly going to turn over? How quickly can you pay it off? Don't go get a 10-year business loan. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Try to pay it off as quickly as possible. Yeah, we're going to have debt, but we're not going to make any money for several years. We're not going to take a single penny. I'm going to have to continue working so that we can just pay our bills.
Right.
And every single penny that we make is going to go to pay off that debt. And hopefully, God willing, we pay off the debt.
Right.
Hopefully that after that, we'll make some money off of it, but who knows?
Right.
So that's my take on it. It's not for everybody. And
Yeah.
I don't suggest for everyone. I think the wisest approach is more towards leaning towards yours, is to go towards a non-debt structure and build it up slowly. Just in our case, what we're doing, it wasn't possible. We had to start at a certain. So what we're doing, we're opening up a drug and alcohol rehab, and it just takes X amount of assets and employees and things like that just to get certified, just to get licensed, just to go through all this rigmarole from the government just to do. So and we didn't have that capital, so we had to.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I see, or at least this is my perception, and you can correct me if I'm off here, but there's certain businesses where it would be really difficult to have the capital to start.
Yeah.
Like you're saying, I think some certain businesses just require so much money, and unless you already have, and this is kind of my perception based off of some other guys that I know that are in business, unless you already have, 5 businesses, you're going to have a hard time coming up with the capital
Absolutely.
to start that other business or that new business.
And it goes towards risk. Like, okay, let's give an example for you. Let's say you have no debt, Barbara. Your house is paid off, everything's good to go, and you needed $10,000 to start up your business. 15. Let's just go 15,000.
Yeah.
Make it a little bit more risky. Would you be willing to mortgage out, take another mortgage on your house or a lien on your house to get that $15,000 from a bank?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's not that
I'm
big
not
of a
doing
risk.
that,
Yeah, I know you wouldn't.
but I could.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not that big of a risk.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Right.
So my question is, what is the fine line between taking out a loan and not taking out a loan? Like, where do you draw that line?
Yeah. So, I guess for me, so I'll just use my situation with the personal training, and at some point, planning on transitioning from personal training to having a gym and opening up a gym. And then that's about the amount that I'm looking at is somewhere around $15,000
Yeah.
to start the gym. And I'm about halfway to that at this point. I could go take out a loan. I think the question for me, and I think this is where we get into risk versus reward. If I were to, so I've been doing the personal training thing for a year plus, I don't know, a year and a half. So, if at that point when I started the personal training business, I would have said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to go take out a $15,000 loan, and I'm just going to open up the gym. Do I believe I could have been successful? Like, yeah, I do. But there's no guarantee there, right? Because here's what I see. I'm trying to look at the market, right?
Yeah.
I care about people's physical health, but I don't want to be a doctor, and so my thing is fitness. And so I want to help people from that aspect, from the fitness aspect. Location matters, right? I mean, if you could go, I would think, so in our area, in our geographical location, if you could go like, not necessarily downtown Monroe, but somewhere
More centralized.
more centralized, where there's just a plethora of people. People work, a lot of people work in a certain location. I'd either have to go down there, or you'd have to go somewhere that's like just kind of booming, blowing up, like Sterlington.
Yeah.
A lot of people are moving out to that area. People, I would say, that are like at least middle class or above out there in that area. That's not really reasonable for me from where I am here and continuing to be able to do my current job on staff at the church. That would be a lot of traveling time, back and forth 3 times a day. I think I would just lose a lot. And so there's various things that you have to take into account there. And then, I think the biggest thing there obviously is how quickly can I begin to bring in enough income, and a large portion of it's going to have to go towards paying off that debt.
Yeah.
Whatever that bill would look like every month. Versus the approach that I'm taking, where I'm not taking out any debt, where I get into it debt free. I'm only making money basically, and the money that I'm making will eventually go towards opening up a gym, and it also gives me this buffer period to figure out if it's really what I want to do.
So in your situation, taking that risk didn't have a big reward. This is kind of what you're saying. Like taking that $15,000 risk of loaning out, starting really quick in a better place, didn't necessarily equate to rewarding you as much as taking that risk, right?
Right. Yeah,
Okay,
basically,
yeah.
essentially. So I mean, if let's put another scenario out there as it pertains to, like, if I were a CrossFit Games athlete and I won the CrossFit Games and my name is out there and I'm this big fitness guru, right? But I know I can't make a living off of that for the rest of my life. So I'm going to go take out a big loan. But here's the thing, like, I have a name. People know me, right? Like,
Loan for what?
to open up a gym.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or maybe a product
And-
line of some sort.
Yeah, product line,
Yeah.
whatever.
And we're all
Like-
this is all assuming that you just want to still be 100% owner. You don't want to take an investor. Yeah.
Right,
But
right. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And so in that scenario, your gym is probably going to be successful just because of your name, right? You're going to put your name on it, Rich Froning.
Yeah.
This is Rich Froning's gym. That gym's going to be successful.
Yeah.
Like almost no matter what.
Yeah, he's
like you'd have to
capitalizing.
be an idiot for that to not be successful.
Yeah.
Right. As opposed to me, I don't really have a name. My name's not out there.
So what about a job? What about taking a risk in a job? Because I also think about an aspect of Abraham in the Old Testament.
Yep, that's where I was going to go to.
Yeah, when God told Abraham to leave, pick up
Right.
everything he's got, and leave.
Right.
And have you ever experienced that in any aspect? And I know we're kind of talking about work, so if you can tie it in, that's fine.
Yeah, well, I think for me, one of the biggest transitional periods in my life was getting out of the military and coming home. And Ashley, my wife, was in pharmacy school here at the University of Louisiana and Monroe, and I had no idea what I was going to do. Well, I say that. I did have a plan, and my plan was to go to the Universal Technical Institute in Houston I wanted to be a BMW or Mercedes mechanic, so they make pretty doggone good money. And I always liked mechanicking. I always liked working on cars. And so that was my plan. However, I was getting up every morning. I was reading the Bible when I just had started in Genesis, and it said that a man is to leave his mother and father and cleave unto his wife. And I had just come out of a situation where I was basically far away from my wife and my son. It was just,
Location-wise?
yeah, location wise. That was kind of the first 3 years, 2.5, 3 years of our marriage and having Brennan I was either in Fort Benning 8 hours away or I was down at Fort Polk 2 hours away, which wasn't as bad, but still Monday through Friday I was not with my wife and my son. And so my plan was to basically do that again, then go to Houston while my wife was still finishing pharmacy school. And when I read that verse there in Genesis, I just got really convicted. Like, I can't do that. I can't go off again. And again, man, I had no idea what I was going to do. And so my wife, being the smart person that she is, she said, well, why don't you just go to college? And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to go to college for. Well, just take general studies. And so that's what I did. I just went and did a semester in general studies. And then about halfway through that semester, so it was a spring semester, and in that February, that's when God called me to ministry. And then I met with our chief of staff here at the church at the time, and he had a proposition for me, and that was to do an internship for the church. And at the end of that 1-year internship, I would, my wife would have graduated pharmacy school, and the plan was I would go off to school, like seminary. And however, at the end of that year, the church staff came to me and said, you're doing a good enough job. We just want to bring you on staff full time, and you can go to school. Because a lot of pastors go to school while they're pastoring.
Yeah.
So that was an obvious option, and so that's what I went with. And so I think that there was definitely, I think about God calling Abraham to leave the land of Ur there. And if you go back, you have to have some understanding of ancient culture and the way things worked back then. And that is, you and me, it's not that big of a deal. I'm not going to say it's not a big deal. But we have transportation. We have U-Hauls that we can pack our stuff into. We have
Security.
Restaurants all along the way.
We have security in our money.
Security in our
We don't
money.
have to transport all of our wealth in a bag across marauder invaded
Exactly.
land.
Right. Exactly.
We have a bank.
Yeah. And that was what, and back in those days, you were highly dependent upon your community.
Mm-hmm.
We have restaurants everywhere. We're not dependent upon our community for a meal at the end of the day. We have a food industry, transportation, etc. And so, man, I think for God to call Abraham, like, hey, leave your land, it wasn't just leaving your land, it was like, leave your community.
And he was pretty old.
And I think he was, I can't remember exactly how old he was at that point.
He wasn't a young guy that's like hip and ready to go. Like, I'll move
right.
to a new place. He was settled. He's been there for a while.
I think everybody was probably pretty well settled
Yeah.
in that type of culture. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Like,
Okay.
like you were dependent upon your community, and that meant you had to be settled. And it meant a lot more to be settled back then, like, because you actually had to settle the land, right? You had to move in and establish. And God says, leave and go to this other place, this land you don't know, that you've never been to. You don't know the path to get there. Just one foot in front of the other, and eventually you'll get there and you'll see. I think that was a huge risk. And I think, whenever I look through the Bible, man, I see risk. I see men being called to take risk, not just taking risk, but being called to take risk all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a biblical character that wasn't called to take some sort of risk. And ultimately, when I look at Jesus, and I kind of wanted to get to this because I think that there has to be an element of trust in risk, right? Like, and I think this is maybe where I draw the line, is when you're taking a risk, what are you trusting in? Even whenever you jumped off the cliff from 65 feet, right? You were kind of trusting that there was not a log floating 2 feet under the water, right?
That is deep enough that I'm not going to bottom out.
Yeah, that is deep enough you're not going to hit something under the water. And so I think that there, or if you go skydiving, you're trusting that parachute's going to open, right? And so for us, I think, or at least for me, as it pertains to taking risk, is what am I also trusting in? I'd better be trusting in something, right? And one thing that I'm absolutely, I think, always trusting in is that God is my provider. And so that if he calls me to do something, I'm trusting that he's going to see it through.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean it may not be difficult. That doesn't mean there may not be failure along the way. But I'm also, in taking a risk, I'm also placing my trust.
Yeah. So just to piggyback off that, this is what I go by. And it's James 4:13. come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will go into such and such town and spend a year there and trade and make a profit, yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring. What is your life? And a lot of that speaks to not necessarily having plans and not necessarily going out and making money and doing business, but it's the very first word, or it's the first couple words. It's the will.
Right.
It's like, is it your will to do that, or is it God's will to do that? And I think a lot of times people make these plans, including myself, without asking God if that's what you want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's anything wrong with opening up a gym. I don't think there's anything wrong with opening up a drug and alcohol rehab, but is that what God wants?
Right.
And I think it's even in your speech. It's even in the way that you approach a situation is, this is going to be, when, like, something that Whitley and I tried to say as much as possible when we open up. We don't say that. We don't say, when we do this. We'll always say, if we open up in XYZ, if, God willing, we do this. And I think that's a very wise way, because otherwise you're very arrogant and prideful to say that you know what's going to happen, that you know that you're going to be successful, that you know this, that, or the other, and it's not right. It's not biblical. It's not wise. It's arrogant.
Right. Absolutely.
And I think it's where you lie your trust, like what you were saying. I was trying to connect that back, and you can take these risks, but at the same time, where's your trust in? And that will help you understand the risk that you're taking.
Right.
What you got there?
Yeah. We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
I think that, what was I going to say? I think you're spot on there. And one of the things that I've always said is that you can't outplan God.
Absolutely.
You can't outplan God. And I think it's good to make plans. I think everybody should have a plan, you know? And I'm not saying that you have to have a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, but like, you need to have an idea of what you're going to do next. If you're graduating high school, I think you need to have an idea of what you're going to do when you graduate high school. You know, and you may have multiple options, and you may not decide, but at least you've got some idea, right?
You should ask God to bless those. You should ask
Right.
God to help you find those plans,
Right.
and to help lead you and to help open doors. And if he opens doors, good, thank him for that. If he closes doors, good, thank him for that.
Right.
How many times? Oh my goodness! I remember a friend of mine, and we started a Bitcoin mining operation. We got a large investment, and we were just about to. I mean, we're talking about a well over 6-figure investment, and we we're just about. I mean, literally, it was a Sunday night or a Sunday morning, and that Monday I was going to place the order for the parts, and spend all that money.
Yeah.
That Sunday night, and we'd been working on this project for months. That Sunday night, the market crashed. And if anyone knows what this is, the difficulty bomb increased, quadrupled. So it basically meant the price of the Bitcoin dropped in half. So we're going to make half as much money.
Wow.
And then it quadrupled in difficulty. So it means we're going to now produce 1/4 of what we were. So that's I'm bad at math. I like math. I think that's 1/8. So we're going to be making 1/8 of what we were originally going to make. I was so upset about that.
Yeah,
but
I bet.
God did that on purpose.
Right.
He did that. He protected us, and he closed the door because that's not what he wanted me to do. And he did it at the right time, and he got all the money saved and returned it, which was I'm so thankful for that.
Right.
So when God closes the door, it's probably for a good reason. I mean, it is for a good reason.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'll go back to why I joined the military. Coming out of high school, maybe make it relevant for even younger people. You know, I was getting ready to graduate high school, and I always had the idea in the back of my mind about joining the military. I've always been intrigued by military, you know, and always had the idea in the back of my mind. But then it came crunch time, you know, like, hey, graduation's right around the corner. I knew I didn't want to go to college. Well, for one thing, at that point in my life, I had a 2.4. When I graduated high school with a 2.4 GPA. It was not very good. I wasn't getting tops or any other monetary help to go to school. And so I just knew I didn't want to go to college. Really had no idea what I wanted to do or what I would have done if I would have tried to enter into the workforce at that point. And I was walking into church, and I'm not the biggest believer in like signs and whatnot, but I think every now and then God might do something like this. I walked into church, like into the back lobby, and there was an Army brochure and like so like the night before I'd gone to bed praying about whether or not to join the military. And I walk into church the next Sunday morning, and there's an Army brochure sitting on the little desk in the lobby or table, and I thought, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. And as I look back on my life, was that the right choice? In that moment, I had no idea really. But looking back, man, for me personally, that was absolutely the right choice. If I had not joined the military, if I would have either entered the workforce or I think tried to go to college, I think it would have been disastrous for me.
Yeah.
I think I would have ended up drinking way too much and probably doing a lot of drugs. I really think that's what I would have done. And so the military for that period in my life from 18 into my early 20s was, I think, really what kept me. I'm not going to say I was like living right and all that, because I wasn't, but it gave me some structure and guidance in life, and I think I came out of it on the other end a lot better.
So are there any other topics? So we kind of talked about work, business, what you want to do with your career. Are there any other risk topics? I think we had another one, didn't we?
Well, there was spiritual risk, but I think we kind
Hit
of got into that.
Yeah.
Are you trusting God? And I don't think you're following God or Christ if there's no risk. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't see anywhere in the scripture where God calls anyone to live this ho-hum, non-risk taking life.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, I think there's a dichotomy here between the genders. I think that
This should be good.
I think that men are more so called / required to take risk than women.
Why?
So this is my experience. A lot of it's based on my relationship with my wife, which I know that's probably viewing things like in a vacuum, but I think that women and children need security. So I'm gonna get in. I'll get into this a little bit. Over the last 10 years, I guess, whatever it is, and I don't know exactly why, but we've doomsday preparation,
Oh, man, that's
zombie
me.
apocalypse survival.
It straight up started with the zombie apocalypse.
All this stuff has gotten really popular. I feel like it's died off a little bit here the last couple of years, but it was kind of like, for a while, at least in my circle,
Russians are coming.
Yeah, whoever, and it maybe even go back to the 80s in the Cold War and all that kind of stuff. But because I was listening to podcasts, because I think a lot of guys get it in their head that, well, in the event that something bad happens, like I'm going to pack my bags and I'm going to take off and we're going to go in the woods.
No, you're going to die. Most of them are going to die.
Here's the thing. You as a man might be able to do that.
Yeah.
But doing that
I
with your
disagree.
wife and children? Absolutely not, buddy.
Nope.
Not going to happen.
Oh man, Whitley's gonna listen to this and hate me for it, but Whitley could do it absolutely. But I always tell her, if there's ever like an apocalyptic situation, like, and we always talk about this in the sci-fi, like Quiet Place or something like that.
Yeah.
With the creatures that could hear anything and they would attack you on sight if they hear you. So we have a blind dog. I'm like, babe, I would leave that dog real quick at our security. And she's like, no, I'm like,
No,
and
that dog's going to get you killed.
Just the other day, I was like, hey, babe, if we were in ever like a survival situation, like, I want you to know, like, I would eat Selah. That's our dog. I would eat our dog. She was like, no, I would die before that happened. I was like, no, you wouldn't. Like, I would.
No, your survival instinct would kick in.
Yeah. Oh man, and that's just that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that there's a different mental aspect to that.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
So
yeah.
So what about?
But so the idea of just leaving your house, right? I think for a guy, like, okay, let's do it. It'll be fun, But for a woman, I think that's like, you're crazy.
Yeah.
I'm not leaving my house.
I remember you telling me something. I don't know where you got it from. It could just be your own theory about women leaving. Because I asked you, I think a while back, I asked you if there was some type of apocalyptic situation, a civil war, Russia invading, whatever, or a zombie apocalypse, even though that can't happen. Would you pick up your family and leave the house? And I remember you kind of talking about, not necessarily depending on the situation, but you would try not to because they
Yeah.
find security in their own home and in their own environment. Whereas, like what you just said, men can get up and leave and go somewhere and feel comfortable, feel safe, secure because they're safe and secure in themselves.
Right. Yeah. So I even had some friends who own some land, and they're like, "Hey, in the event something happens, you can come out to our place." And they don't have a big enough house, right? So what we'd be looking at is building some structure out in their woods to live in, you know. And I was like, "All right, listen, the fantasy sounds cool to do that. That would be last case scenario. Basically, for me, leaving my home is last case scenario for the sake, not for my sake, but for the sake of my wife and my children, because they need walls, and for us, our home is our walls, you know. And I mean, we have a brick house, so it's just and not that brick walls are necessarily all that much more protective than a wooden house, but it makes you feel that way. And I think it's definitely going to give women and children a far more sense of security than going out in the woods and trying to build a log cabin.
And what about the physical aspect of it? I mean, let's just be honest here. Men are physically capable, more
Right.
capable,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah.
Let's not get too
Yeah.
politically incorrect.
Not that there's not some women out there who are plenty physically
Oh, dude,
capable.
I know, yeah.
But,
They're definitely, like Ronda Rousey, she could take me down in a heartbeat.
yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. Right. So there's some women out there, but in general, by and large, men should be far more physically capable of handling those types of situations. I think that's why, you know, I'm of the opinion that I don't.
do you think it's, sorry.
Well, you know, there's just kind of been the whole military thing of putting women in combat arms. I'm not a fan of it.
In what aspect? One, they're physically not as strong, or the whole
So
man
two,
and women
yeah,
thing?
two aspects. If a woman can carry her weight physically, okay,
What
All right,
on the
like,
on the
okay.
on the women's scale or the men's scale?
what do you mean?
Like the PT test. They have the female PT test, and then they have the men's PT test.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. I think you need to have one set standard, and if you can't meet that standard, then you should.
For combat arms,
For combat,
yeah.
for combat arms, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think there should be one standard,
there?
and if the woman can't meet that standard,
then
I'm not sure, man. I have to look at. They're changing the PT test right now too, so
Okay.
it's gonna be a lot more like CrossFit than
Yeah.
than it was.
Well, I know,
There's gonna
like-
be some lifting and
I mean, but I just
pulling,
no
dragging,
offense.
and
I'm a 210-pound guy.
yeah,
If a woman can't pick me up and carry me off the field, not even if anyone can't
Yeah.
pick me up and carry me off the field, don't go into combat.
yeah,
I don't want you next to me.
yeah. Well,
mean- Okay.
I don't know if that should be the one thing.
No. That obviously not. But that mentality is
Yeah.
that if you can't perform physically
Right.
and if you can't do the basic requirements for that job, you don't get that job.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. And that was just
Right.
one example.
Exactly. Spot on there. But I think the other aspect of it is this, man. Like I spent a lot of time in the back of a M113, which is just a aluminum box on tracks, with 6-7 other dudes. I just don't want a woman in there.
Yeah.
You know, there's conversations that take place. You gotta do some personal hygiene.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't agree with mixing the genders in that type of environment.
Yeah.
I think it's going to create.
I've heard this argument before is that romance would happen.
Yeah,
Like-
it's inevitable. It's inevitable.
We're not talking about, and I'm not just talking about
and
the
then
physical
things
part.
get emotional,
Emotional. That's what I was getting at.
and then you lose your head
Mm-hmm.
in a combat situation,
Absolutely.
and that's not okay. It's not good.
I had something else. I'm trying to remember what it was. What about talking about protection of the family? We're trying to talk
Yeah.
about protection. So where do you draw the line, or what's your opinion on protecting the family? What's your wise advice about that?
I think that men, and then we could do a whole another podcast on this, but I think it's man's responsibility to protect.
To what extent?
all of it.
What do you mean?
Well, like I see a lot of in the news. Sorry, I should have prefaced this.
That's
all right. You see a lot of on the news. European law is starting to trend towards protecting the criminal, to where you can't defend your own property. You can't defend if someone breaks into your house.
Yeah.
You can't shoot them.
Yeah, well, and
Don't have
even
castle dog.
criminals who break into houses, even in the U.S., I think, they can sue.
Which is ridiculous.
They can sue the person's house who they broke into.
If you come into my house, I'm gonna shoot. And like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna shoot
Yeah,
you.
you can shot.
I'm like, I don't care, man.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I say, if you're, I take that back. If you're some drunk lady walks into my house and you're not too much of a threat to me or my wife or my animals or something like that, I'm probably not gonna shoot you. I'm gonna try to call the cops. I'm probably gonna try to subdue you first.
Yeah.
But if you're some big dude that walks in and it's dark at night and you're not responding to me, I might shoot you in the leg
If
first.
I perceive you, I'm not shooting him in the leg.
I've always yeah, that's
I'm
Center mass.
2 center, 1 in the head.
really.
Yeah, every time.
I mean, if the
You
guy's
have
coming
to
at
you have to stop the threat.
Mhm.
When it comes to being attacked, you have to stop the threat. Shooting someone in the leg. Here's the thing: I saw plenty of people get shot in combat in Iraq. Oftentimes, they don't even feel it. Like until it does the physical damage, right? Until it stops blood flow, or it severs nerves, or organs start to shut down. And in certain cases, that person, like, there's so much adrenaline
True.
that they don't even feel it,
I get, yeah.
and they just keep moving.
Yeah, well,
And so you have to physically stop them. Like, you can't just fire off a shot and think they're going to be like, oh,
That's
I
true.
just got shot in
That's
the
a good
leg, so I'm going to turn around and
yeah.
take off or stop attacking.
Well, there's a lot of I guess controversy about when a cop has to shoot somebody. Like, well, why did you have to shoot him? Like all your bullets, like you could have just shot him once. But when you actually look at multiple views and different scenarios, like one bullet doesn't stop them,
No.
especially if they're on some kind of drug or something.
PCP
Like
or something.
Yeah.
it takes more than a whole mag to
Yeah.
stop some people like that.
I was watching a video the other day, and obviously that's very media biased. They're going to show the worst cases a lot
Right.
of times. Some of them are tragedy. Some of them are, okay, the cop shouldn't have done that. But the
Yeah.
majority of the time, man, cops are put in a terrible position that they shouldn't have to be put in, but they take that risk to protect us, and they do the best they can with the training that they have in a terrible situation. I was watching
Right.
one video the other day of a cop that was, the guy was literally coming, I think it was a knife. He was literally coming
Just the guy
at
that
him.
he rear-ended the cop. and
Yeah,
came
he
after
rear-ended
him.
the
Yeah.
cop and came at him with a knife, and the cop was running from the guy, like, stop, drop the knife, drop
Right.
the knife, and like he pulled out his gun, drop
that-
the knife, drop
yeah.
the knife, like, and I think he tripped and fell and like got back up, and the guy's literally coming. The cop gave him so many shots,
He
and
did.
finally just shot him. Like,
Yeah.
come
That
on.
cop did everything he could have done
Yeah,
to avoid that situation.
absolutely. And the guy was, I think people got mad because the guy was mentally handicapped, like he was having an episode or something like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of I think maybe that was one of the, I might be getting the stories mixed
But
up.
here's the thing, man.
It's your life.
Somebody having, it's your life or it's the cop's life or the other guy. Like,
That's a terrible thing about it, but it's the truth.
even if someone is mentally handicapped, like and
Well, no,
I hate that, but
I'm not saying that shouldn't have justified the cop. I'm just saying a lot of people
Yeah.
got up in
Yeah,
arms like,
right.
oh, he was mentally handicapped. He shouldn't
well,
have done that.
what else do you want the cop? You just want the cop to die?
Yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
if that guy goes after you, you're not gonna let
him
him
a
kill
hug.
you just because he's mentally handicapped. Like
Yeah.
And that guy wasn't so mentally handicapped that he couldn't drive a vehicle.
exactly.
He was driving a vehicle.
Mhm.
So,
Well, I'm not saying mentally handicapped in like.
well, yeah, he had
physically
mental
do something.
issue, he had
Yeah,
mental
yeah,
problems.
yeah.
Yeah, sure, mental health problems. But but here's the thing, man. I've had mental health problems, and to me, this is my opinion, and it may not be the popular opinion out there today, but a mental health issue is not an excuse for doing harm to other people.
Mhm.
Like, you can't excuse that, because I've watched some things about people having frontal lobe issues. People that do violence to others have frontal lobe issues, and I would really like to see some research out there about whether or not people have frontal lobe damage and then they commit crime, or whether or not they slowly commit crime and their frontal lobe changes due to their behavior
Yeah.
over time,
I-
and it makes them more, and they become more prone. So in essence, they're making themselves more prone to do more harm.
I don't know. I don't know anything about that aspect because I when I think about mental health, instantly I think of someone that is incapable of understanding what they're doing is wrong in that situation, or they're too scared to realize whatever the situation is. I don't even know if that's true or not. I can't
Yeah.
speak on. Honestly, I just don't have the knowledge to speak on that. What about owning a gun? Should everyone? What's your opinion on owning a
My
gun?
opinion is everyone should own a gun.
Absolutely. I just think, and I think that's, I just think that's the wise thing to do. And,
Yeah.
and even when it comes past protection, it comes to defending not only your family but your property and defending it from.
Or maybe even in some wild scenario, defending the nation.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is defending.
If China and Russia ganged up and decided to invade the United States, man, our military doesn't have the numbers
Mhm.
to deal with that. It's going to come down to citizens.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm a big proponent of civilian army, so to speak.
Well, when you look at that's how the American Army started, was civilians.
The American Revolution.
the Minutemen, like
Mm-hmm.
the U.S. Army at that time was pretty much close to nothing.
Yeah.
They had very little full-time paid soldiers. So when it came down to the majority of the battles against the British,
Yeah, and so that's kind of what this whole topic to me. Look, I want to pull this out real quick, just for the camera. So this was the whole reason for why I even brought this up. This topic was risk and security and protection. Is that and I asked about the guns because this is a 357 Magnum. It was my grandfather's. Who I'm trying not to point it. I'm trying to put it in the camera, but not point it at
Right.
anyone else. My grandfather back in I think it was the 50s, because I got the original box. I think it was a 50s bought gun. He bought that gun to protect his family,
Yeah.
and then he passed it down to his father, who passed it down to me, and that I think is why I think people should have a gun, is to protect their family, to protect their land, their rights, their constitutional rights.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that are apparently living in like a fantasy world.
everything's good.
Let's get rid of guns. You're not getting rid of guns. I'm sorry, but you're not. If you put out a law that said nobody's allowed to have guns, the only people
Civil
that are going to
War.
allow that, the only people that are going to abide by that law would be law-abiding people. Non-law-abiding citizens are not going to turn in their guns. It's what the nature of a bad guy is that they're going to break the rules.
the majority of people who actually shoot someone, like in a criminalized way, they already shouldn't have a gun because they're a felon in the past, and so they're not even allowed to have guns, but they still
But
have
they still
one.
have guns.
Yeah.
And they're always going to have guns. Guns are here. Guns are real. People are going to have them. You'd better have one too.
I'm not even, absolutely. I'm not even necessarily afraid of. I'm afraid of people, like bad people. I'm afraid of the government. If we don't have guns,
Well, that's
if
why
our
the
guns
Second Amendment was written,
Yeah, if our guns are taken away, it's just easier for the government
to
to
keep the
trample on
government
us.
in check.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the government doesn't say, "Hey, we're going to come take everything you have."
And I think one way that they sell it is that they sell it with this mentality that, and you see this more and more, man, is that we're good people. The
Yeah.
world is good.
Well,
people
that's-
are inherently good.
Right.
And that's not true.
That is, in my opinion, that is one of the biggest problems with our society today, and perhaps the world, is that we've come to a point where we really believe that human beings are inherently good. And here's the thing, man. Most human beings might do good most of the time, but how many times does someone have to do something wrong to make them not inherently good? Just once. You do one thing wrong, and I mean, I've done one thing wrong. You've done one. We've all done one thing wrong. That makes us not good. And so, yeah, the belief that human beings are inherently good is just false. So we're about to bring the podcast to a close here, and I have a quote pulled up by Theodore Roosevelt. I think it was made in one of his speeches, and I love this quote. It was actually a part of it. It was on the back of a shirt that I bought a while back, and I didn't really know what it was, but I looked it up, and since then I've just fallen in love with this quote. So I'll let Brennan read it since he's looking at the computer there.
Okay. The man in the arena. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to the deeds? Who knows great enthusiasm, the great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat.
I love that quote.
It's a good quote.
It's like, get out of the bleachers, get on the field, and play the game. Because if you just sit there, you'll never know. So go find out. See you guys next time.
Ooh.